For better or worse, will the Trump administration permanently change elite universities? In the most publicized battle, Harvard has taken the government to court to stop the cancellation of research funding and international student visas. But will the U.S. justice system defend the world's richest institutions, or will they be forced to change their social fabric and profit models? I'm Andrea Sankey, and this is the Newsmakers. According to Harvard University's case before the courts, the U.S. government has terminated grants that fund research into biological threats to national security, infectious diseases, pediatric HIV, and cancer treatments. Still, the White House says it has no choice but to force change onto top schools who become strongholds of woke thinking and antisemitism, all while receiving billions of taxpayer dollars. Meanwhile, U.S. embassies around the world have been ordered to stop student visa interviews pending more thorough screening of social media accounts and activism. It's all thrown the future of the planet's top universities into question. Here's a look.
Members of the class of 2025 from down the street, across the country, and around the world. Around the world, just as it should be.
A standing ovation for the Harvard president. But underscoring the applause, students and academics are caught in a battle with the White House. The Trump administration is locking horns with elite universities, and Harvard is being used as an example. The administration has accused Harvard and others of unsafe environments, failing to do enough to tackle anti-Semitism on campus, and saying that the number of international students is too high.
We have Americans that want to go there and to other places, and they can't go there because you have 31% foreign. Now, no foreign government contributes money to Harvard. We do. So why are they doing so many? Number one. Number two, we want a list of those foreign students, and we'll find out whether or not they're okay. Many will be okay, I assume. And I assume with Harvard, many will be bad. And then the other thing is they're very anti-Semitic. Everybody knows they're anti-Semitic, and that's got to stop immediately.
But Harvard is fighting back against the multi-fronted attacks. It's defied orders to allow government officials to alter and control the curriculum, and has rejected claims that students are anti-Semitic, radicalized, or learning communist agendas. In response, the administration froze billions of dollars of funding and grant money and is threatening to end the university's tax breaks. But that's a legal sticking point for the White House. Its attempt to end international student enrollments has been blocked by a federal judge, and that block has already been extended once. International students make up more than a quarter of all Harvard enrollments, and hundreds of thousands of current and potential future international students across the US watch on as their studying goals are in limbo.
We as international students in Harvard in the US, we are not enemies of the US. We don't hate the US. If we are here, it's because we admire this country, and we admire actually the academic and the liberty and the freedoms that this country has. When we go back home, most of us serve as ambassadors to the country in an informal way. We go back to strengthen American ties with our countries economically, diplomatically, politically, academically.
The administration partly backed down just in advance of that ruling, instead giving Harvard 30 days, a deadline that ends just a few days before the end of June, to hand over details of international students before further funding cuts. Universities are concerned that a lack of grant money negatively affects the US's scientific progress and competitiveness.
And there's a widespread misconception that the government just supports Harvard. It doesn't. The government pays for research to be done. Scientists submit proposals. They are evaluated in a process of fierce competitive review in response to programs that Congress sets up for areas of research that would benefit the country. If the money doesn't come, the research doesn't get done. It's not as if it gets thrown into a big piggy bank for Harvard.
But with a president that has long publicly professed his love of the poorly educated, is this a battle that Harvard and universities across the US can win?
Well, joining me now to debate whether elite universities can and should be forced to change are from New York, civil rights lawyer Laura Dunn, from Tampa, Florida, Republican strategist and former Florida State House candidate Matt Tito, and from Berlin, Professor Emeritus of Media, Culture and Communications at New York University, Arjun Appadurai. Thanks all so much for being with me. Greatly appreciated. Laura, I'll start with you because we know this is a hugely polarizing issue, but in your opinion, is there any foundation to what the White House says needs to change about elite universities, or is all of it, counterproductive for you?
I think what's happening in the United States with the Trump administration targeting higher education is deeply concerning. We have free speech in this country under the First Amendment. Students can protest, speak out if they disagree with wars. And this administration is trying to twist some protest into arguments that this is anti-Semitic and therefore a violation of civil rights, to rescind federal funding for these universities and bring them to heel. So Harvard is one of the few that has pushed back, is not bowing to this administration, and that's really important. We need educational institutions to be beacons of freedom, free thought, free speech, and protests if students want to engage in them legally.
Is it, Laura, just to clamp down on free speech? I mean, to what end, really, do you think? Is there something bigger? You say it's deeply concerning. Is there something else you feel this administration is trying to change long-term about how these universities teach their students and how they function and influence the culture in the United States?
I mean, there's been a lot of conservative criticism of quote unquote Ivy Leagues or elite institutions, that they are more liberal leaning, not as open to conservative thought. But as someone who regularly deals with students and administration, I think universities actually reflect the younger generations. I think we have more progressive individuals being raised in this country who want more freedoms, more civil liberties, and less totalitarianism. And yet we have a government that's pushing totalitarianism and is trying to curb the ability of these institutions to teach about civil rights and free expression. So it is kind of a broader issue about a culture war that's happening in the United States, polarized between conservative and liberal political parties.
Interesting. I mean, Matt, based on what Laura has said then, if we look at, elite universities and how they've been functioning over the years, they've been at full power. They've had the maximum funding that they can get. They've had students at full capacity, yet still Trump won. And in most American universities, there are lots of Republican organizations, Young Republicans for America, et cetera. So what is this administration afraid of in allowing these institutions to proceed as they have? Why do they need to be stopped functioning the way they've been functioning?
Well, these institutions have had unlimited amounts of power for decades and decades, and it's gone essentially unchecked. And when it comes to free speech is fine, except when you're allowing these pro-Palestinian protests, which is promoting anti-Semitism on your campuses, and you're not coming out and you're not protecting the Jewish students that you have. That's when it becomes a problem, is when you are violating the civil rights of your own students. Also, 25% of the students at Harvard are international students. They're coming from other countries. There was an article that came out yesterday talking about the school of choice, the party school of choice for the CCP is Harvard, where the political elites go to get educated. I mean, I never knew that Harvard, and I don't think anybody considered Harvard a party school, but apparently the CCP does. So when you have international students, 25% of your students coming from other countries, they're coming to your campus that's federally funded by the American taxpayer, and they're promoting anti-American views, and they're promoting things against the American agenda and against the American people. That's where I think the Trump administration has a huge problem.
Okay, Arjun, as someone who knows these institutions pretty intimately from the inside, where do you see the in-between here?
Well, I do believe that there is something going on in the Trump administration's attacks in the last 2 months, that is in this Trump presidency, which is concerning and which is, if I may use the word, radical. And I only make 2 points about this, that I came to the US in 1967 as a foreign student invited and fully funded by Brandeis University, a famously Jewish-supported institution. And ever since in my time in the US, till this year, it has been a point of pride how many international students any particular university has. It's further the case that American accomplishments in every area, not least Silicon Valley, but also in medicine, in basic sciences, in arts, have been fed and fueled by this openness to the world. So I don't see the point of suddenly closing that faucet off. Finally, I would say, yes, I am sure my friends and people I know who are Jewish on campuses, not just Harvard, but across the country, have from time to time, especially since last October, felt threatened or marginalized or silenced. I will only add that they are not the only ethnic or religious group to have felt that over the years and decades. And I'll mention only one case, African Americans, who have felt this forever. So my complaint is, do not single out anti-Semitism. There are many, many other things going on. And the final point is, universities are places for discomfort, for debate, for dissent, and for learning. They're not for making everybody feel comfortable as if they are home in their own bedrooms.
Okay. Let me come back to Laura and ask if there's a way to, in seeing how extremely different the positions are here, can we find kind of a better in-between? These are, to be fair, some of the richest institutions on the planet. They're private, yet receiving, billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars, while taking, and I have to say, some pretty exorbitant tuition fees from international students who many argue can actually take priority over qualified U.S. students because they pay more. So, is that really fair? Is there something that can be done to make an adjustment so that U.S. students feel that they have more priority, even if they can't afford to pay, over the 25% of the international student population that's paying these higher fees?
It's such an interesting question because, as you point out, this is a private institution. It's not a state institution. It's not a government institution. And the interesting thing about the federal government having given funding to a private institution is that's how they enforce civil rights in the United States. Because of the giving of money, they can require a private institution that normally doesn't have to abide by the Constitution or civil rights laws. Through that giving of money, that is how they get them to abide by the law. So by withdrawing federal funds, the deep, deep irony is it's undercutting the way that we enforce civil rights in private institutions. Private institutions don't owe the U.S. anything. They don't have to take any U.S. students. They could take 100% international students. This idea that it's somehow like an extension of the government and the government should control it is so antithetical to the Constitution and the way we run our society that that's not even a question. So it's concerning. We have to remember these are private institutions. They can create whatever priority they want. I think Harvard will always have an interest in having some level of U.S. students, but why shouldn't we attract the top talent in the United States? I live in New York. Top talent from all around the world works in New York, pays taxes to the United States because of programs like this.
That's a very interesting contradiction, Matt. How would you address that? Would it be better then if these elite institutions only took international students as private entities, then wouldn't have to abide by any executive order from the White House really whatsoever, according to U.S. laws?
Well, that's certainly up to Harvard, and I don't know why they're taking any federal funds at all. If you're getting $3 billion in government grants every single year, that seems like a colossal waste of money for the American taxpayer. Meanwhile, Harvard has a $53 billion endowment. They make $5 billion a year just off the interest on that money. So there's thousands of great small private universities in the United States of America and trade schools that could use that money. And it certainly wouldn't take billions of dollars to help these schools out, where you have teachers barely making and professors barely making anything at some of these universities. Some of these small universities are struggling to pay their bills. And so why Harvard needs any money from the federal government is a mystery to me. It sounds totally corrupt. And if you're on the side of that, you're either benefiting somehow or you're corrupt. I don't understand.
Okay, so Matt, what about
the
scientific research that a lot of these grants are funding at these elite universities? I mean, they're dealing with some of the top minds in the world that work through these elite institutions. As we said in the introduction, this is funding research into treatments for cancer. It's funding research into biological threats against U.S. national security interest. I mean, that benefits all Americans. And again, it's working in cooperation with the government and some of the top scientists and researchers in the world that work through these institutions. Do you want to lose that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably what somebody read, or that's what they're telling you. But I believe, just like, DOGE just did a complete audit of the United States government, there needs to be an audit of these universities. How much of that federal money is actually going to what you just mentioned, and how much is going to line people's pockets? I mean, I think that's a fair assessment that we need to do. If you're going to take money from the federal government is going to want to have some say in how you run your operation, what type of students you let in from all over the world. I mean, it's a national security issue to let in all these people from all over the world unchecked. And also, you're taking away spots from American citizens. And right now, we have the most pro-America president we've probably ever had in the United States of America, and he's finally clamping down on this misbehavior from Harvard.
Okay, Arjun, I mean, is what I'm saying about the research that I'm hearing about, corresponding between the government and the top scientists at the elite institutions, is that all fiction?
Well, I have a clear view on this matter. There's been at least 100 years in which a vast network of institutions, including the federal government, has pumped or outsourced high-end research to universities, large, private, public, big, and small. And they have 1,000 mechanisms for review and audit, which are absolutely routine. So let me say, no one gets ongoing. It's not a gas station and not a free gas station. You are constantly reviewed. And the main mode of review is results. Nobody's going to give a group, a lab, or a scientist funds when he has shown zero results. So whether he's taken the money to Switzerland or put it away in the Bahamas, he will not get his next grant. But we have 100 years minimum where the US has benefited remarkably. And people keep talking of medicine and biology. I'll mention things like DARPA. They put gazillions of dollars, the Pentagon, the Navy put money into the study of logic, not philosophical logic, because they think it's basic research. I can give you 1,000 examples, and these were being audited all the time as open. The other thing I'll say very simply about money going to places like Harvard, I believe we all have heard the word market. Where does the money go? Where do the students come? Who wants to pay? Anyone who doesn't want to go to Harvard because it's A, B, C, or D, or doesn't want to go to Berkeley, or doesn't want to go to the University of Florida, the US has 3,000 institutions. It's a huge educational market. There's a market for short people, there's a place for tall people, there's a place for green people, yellow people. So there is a market. So to now complain that the market needs a sudden correction is extremely strange to me.
Okay, so Laura, I mean, according to what Arjun was arguing there, I mean, do you think the average voter understands how the broader U.S. population might benefit from government grants to Harvard when it comes especially to science and research? Or is that now not really talked about, or in part because Matt even says it's not really true?
Well, I disagree with Matt. Federal funding goes directly to research, right? There's the Department of Energy that gives grants, the Department of Defense that gives grants. There's all these federal agencies that are doling out the money, have contract terms for what it is used for, and has regular reporting. And students only get that money if they actually work in those labs. Otherwise, it's the professors that are paying US taxes and contributing to our culture and society that are running these labs and getting the bulk of those funds. Students that apply to Harvard only get federal funding under certain circumstances. You have to be a US citizen to even qualify for federal funding to go to school here. So it's a lot of misinformation, and it's trying to make the public be outraged so much money is going to this institution, but is going for our benefit. We're getting vaccines, we're getting defense research, we're getting all these public goods, and that's actually why we're a leader in the world. So the Trump administration is actually undercutting the United States. This is not a pro-America president. He is dismantling what has made us great in this nation.
Matt, you're not convinced?
No, I don't think so. And we're certainly not going to be able to litigate on this show whether or not the money going to Harvard is being used for actually productive things. But the better argument is you have a $53 billion endowment. Okay, use some of that money to do your own research at this point. I mean, we have so much money that we're just wasting. We could be giving it to other institutions. We could be spreading that money around. And Harvard has more than enough money. They have more money than some countries have. And when you have 25% of your students are not from America, the only reason for that is because they pay full freight, like you mentioned, and they pay more than the American student because the American student has things like scholarships they can get and other things that cut into the profit of Harvard. So they love the international students, not because they're the best and the brightest, but they're going to pay and they're going to overpay, and they come from rich elite families across the world. And so that's the real reason. And so Trump is clamping down on that stuff. I think it's absolutely necessary in order to restore what Harvard was intended to be. And that is the beacon of American greatness and education, and it needs to get back to that.
Matt, let me just ask you on kind of on a personal level, if I can. You know, I don't know where you went to university or what the experience was like for you, but I know for a lot of American students, it is kind of their first exposure to an international community. It's the first time they meet friends from different parts of the world and kind of can get a chance to experience a culture that they've never really seen or even heard of before, to be fair. Do you think you might or could possibly be doing the American student a disservice by pulling that experience from universities?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I went into the Marine Corps and I met people from all over the country. I traveled all over the world. I met lots of people from different cultures and different backgrounds, and it was an amazing experience. You can graduate high school, you can go travel the world. You can do many different things to meet people from other countries. I mean, just because you don't have international students at your college doesn't mean that you're missing out on some great experience. So no, I don't think that that's a good argument to have these people at our schools taking up spots. And again, you know, they're coming here and they're basically protesting anti-American things, and that needs to stop.
Fair enough. Okay, Arjun, let me ask you for the long term. Will Harvard and other elite schools, I mean, I think you said before, they're going to outlive Trump. But the fear for the people on the other side is that it's going to lead to lasting changes in the fabric of these universities. What do you think is the long term? Go ahead.
Sorry. I'll say two quick things and then go on to whether there is a problem, not just with Harvard, but with American universities and colleges generally, that needs to be faced honestly. But the first thing I'll say is it is not a rigged market. It's like saying Citibank is a huge bank. Why don't we just have small banks in little towns and close all the big ones? They have huge amounts of money. What do they need it for, etc. I think it's as flawed to say, let's get the Harvards and the Princetons out of the business and, you know, have very small universities from tiny towns and Americans will go to them. I just think it's the wrong way. But I do want to say there are problems all the way from Harvard to the Midwest, from private to public, from community colleges to major universities. I have written that explicitly in more than one essay. And what I will say is the university has become overburdened, has taken on way too much. And it's because it's been handed to them to be therapists, to be sports agencies. Whoever said that football, basketball, and baseball will die if they are not huge businesses on campus? That has nothing to do with anything that's being controlled or audited. So I have said explicitly this: universities, all of them, liberal arts all the way up, need to go back to the basics. Teach, debate, read, argue, create new knowledge, because everybody else will create knowledge only for themselves. Pharmaceuticals, churches, armies. But if you want knowledge at large, which anybody can enjoy, it comes out of colleges. So I think colleges and universities have lost the way, have lost their way, not exactly in the way that the Trump administration argues, but I certainly think they need to go back to basics and cut out a lot of the extra work they do, which is in many areas not necessary.
We need another hour at least to discuss those points, Arjun. You bring up some very interesting points. American university culture is really like none other on the planet. Some really do love it, though, for everything you've just listed there. But as I said, we'll have to talk about that at a further date, because we're completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers. So I'd like to thank sincerely all three of you so much for joining us on this panel, and our viewers for being with us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.